This is a story called The Family Living in Their Car and Tent. There's a young black family of 5 who have everything they could wish for. Gina, aged 28, and Philip, aged 29, both run their own business together, which they started from scratch. Their children, Emily, aged 9, Holly, aged 7, and Solomon, aged 5, are all in private school and are doing really well. However, Gina has just found out that she is pregnant again, so they decided to move to a bigger house so the kids can each have their own room. At the moment they are all living in an all-black community. The law was changed about 5 years ago so that black people can live in a white community. The couple, Gina and Philip, have found the perfect house. It was an 8-bedroom detached house in an all-white community. The neighbours in the community they already live in tell them that they are crazy moving to an all-white community, despite the change in the law. The family moved into their new house, but straight away they were met with racism. One guy said, "This is an all-white community. No blacks have ever lived here, so why don't you go back to where you come from, because we don't want you here." Philip said to him, "We have as much right to live here as you do." "No, you don't. This is an all-white community, always has been. Go back to where you came from." Obviously, you don't know about the change in the law. Now people who are black are allowed to live in all-white communities. It doesn't matter what the law says, we don't want you here. Look, we don't want any trouble. You leave us alone and we'll leave you alone. Just go back to where you came from and don't come back. After that first day, the family were constantly the victims of racism, but they were adamant they were staying put. However, things got worse and worse for the family. They had bricks thrown through their windows and their business went bust because no one would buy the products they were selling anymore. All the money they had in the bank went on living expenses and school fees. One night they were all in bed asleep when their garden shed was set on fire. The guys who did it were seen by Holly when she got up to go to the toilet. She ran into her parents' bedroom and woke them up saying, "Mummy, Daddy, the garden shed's on fire. It was the bad man and his friends who said we weren't welcome here." "Oh no. Holly, sweetheart, stay inside, go back to bed like a good girl, while your daddy puts out the fire." Philip managed to put the fire out, but the shed was wrecked and so was everything in it, including the kids' bikes and some of their toys. The family were devastated but unharmed. However, this incident made Philip and Gina more determined than ever to stay. Things didn't get any better and a few days later their house was burnt to the ground. They managed to rescue some of their belongings after the fire was out, but they now had nowhere to live and no one to turn to. All they had were the clothes they stood up in and a few bits of clothing they managed to rescue after the fire. The family had a huge family tent which they set up and lived in. When the weather got really bad and it was too cold to sleep in the tent, the whole family had no choice but to sleep in their car. This went on for weeks. The children had left their private school and they were now attending an all-white public school. Of course, being black, they stood out in a crowd. Because of this, they were badly bullied. Even the teachers seemed to single them out and blame any trouble on them, and they were all desperately unhappy. After a while, Philip and Gina took the kids out of school. They continued to live in their car and tent, but they were still living on the same street. The men who burnt their house down said that if they didn't leave, they were going to set their car and tent on fire with them inside. By this time, Gina was 8 months pregnant, and they all knew that the men would do what they threatened to do, so they were left with no choice but to move away. They drove around for hours not knowing where they were going or what they were going to do. They all had something to eat and drink. The kids played outside for a bit and then they all settled down for the night in their car. The next morning they moved on because they were in the middle of nowhere. They drove for hours and hours and then stopped to eat, etc. That night they slept in their car again. This went on for about 6 weeks, even after baby Mary was born. One day they were about to set off again when a nice couple saw them putting their bedding away. They went up and introduced themselves as Emma and George. They asked Gina and Philip why they were sleeping in their car with a newborn baby and 3 young kids. Philip explained what had happened to them and told the couple they didn't want any trouble and that they were just about to move on. Emma said, "No, you don't have to move on. We have plenty of room at our house. You're welcome to stay with us. You won't find any of that hostility in our town. Everyone's welcome here. Come on, you can't live in your car or tent with 3 young kids and a newborn baby." "Well, if you're sure, we could all do with a decent night's sleep and some decent food." "Yes, of course we're sure. Come on, follow us in your car." Philip followed Emma and George, and when they got to their house, it was less than a 5-minute walk from the beach. They all had a bath and some supper, and then they all went to bed. The following day, Emma and George took the family round the town and introduced them to their friends and family. Everyone was really friendly. Emma worked at the local diner and she also owned it. She offered Gina a job, but Gina said there was no one to look after the kids. Emma told her that her friend Lauren was a childminder with over 10 years' experience. Gina said, "Well, I guess it's a yes, I'll take the job." Then George told Philip that he owned his own surfboarding business and asked him if he'd like to work for him. Philip said, "I don't know anything about surfboards or surfing, but I'm willing to learn if you're willing to teach me." "Of course, I'm more than happy to teach you." Gina and Philip couldn't believe their luck or how nice and friendly everyone was. Even the kids wanted to make friends with their kids. On the day the kids, except baby Mary of course, went to their new school for the first time, they were all really scared and nervous. However, they soon discovered that they didn't need to be, because everyone was very friendly and welcoming, even the teachers. The family knew that they would be safe here, and they decided to settle down and stay in this town. Philip and Gina eventually managed to save up enough money to enable them to rent their own place. The whole family are finally settled and happy. Philip and Gina were doing really well in their jobs, and the kids were all doing really well in school. Baby Mary was reaching all the right milestones at the rate she should be. The family have now lived in this town for almost 2 years, and they hope to spend the rest of their lives there. The end. Thank you.